On. Hi there, everyone. Thank you very much. We are lucky enough to have with us Rebecca Papworth, who is Managing Director of CanCan Productions. This talk is The Journey to Steph's Packed Lunch. Rebecca is an executive and creative producer with 20 years experience at a senior level in broadcast television. She established Hat-Trick North, which is a branch of Hat-Trick Productions, and she launched the Salford sitcom Showcase and was executive producer at BBC Comedy North, as well as commissioning editor and commissioning executive for BBC Nations and Regions. Her credits include Citizen Khan for BBC One. She developed Sunny D for BBC Three, Barbara Nice for Radio 2, and Home from Home with Johnny Vegas on BBC One. She's produced Gavin and Stacey, The Royal Family, Rapsy Nesbitt, and Have I Got News for You, where she was the first woman to produce the show. She's the executive producer for Steph's Packed Lunch on Channel 4. And Rebecca, thank you so much for coming in today and joining us. This is ace. So could you just tell us and tell everyone, it's like your background, where you're from, and what it was that attracted you to a career in television?
Well, it's nice to be here anyway, by the way. So I started basically I grew up in Bradford. Halifax and Bradford there was nobody obviously involved in TV there. And in effect, what happened was I just loved television. I think that's what I would say is how I started my career in TV, is that I just watched masses of it. I absolutely adored it. You know, I can remember getting very, very excited about ident changes, at 11, right. That's sort of where I was. I was a, fangirl. And ultimately what happened is that the opportunities were not obvious in any way. But when I eventually saw an opportunity, which was do you want me to start there? Bradford Festival TV.
Yeah, please, yeah.
It was bizarre. I was in Manchester. I was a mature student. And I was in Manchester doing history of art. And basically Bradford Festival had a thing called Bradford Festival TV. Completely obscure, completely random, obscure channel. There was going to be about 10 people watching. But I effectively got in there to do work experience in my second year. So across the summer of my second year at uni, I went in there and there was a ton of equipment. They'd got about probably £1 million worth of equipment to play this thing out and absolutely nobody to produce anything. And I wasn't a trained media student. I really wasn't. What I had was a really strong instinct based on watching too much TV that I knew you needed content to put on it. So I basically ended up producing in that first year, and then they ran it again as another sort of in my third year, and I went back and ended up doing about 48 hours of producing, directing.
Was this a paid gig or was this?
No, completely freelance. It's a work experience. Wasn't paid a bean.
Right. It's like 5 days a week.
5 days a week, ridiculous hours.
Right.
But off the back of that, I pulled together. I was making you laugh, Ricardo, wasn't I, with this? But basically, I pulled together a little show reel. And I mean, I'm literally so old that there was no internet, but I had to get this show reel out to people. So I used to look at Guardian Media, which was the only sort of newspaper that had things in. Yeah. And I printed off all these, something like 48 VHSs, wrapped it in pink fun fur. Literally wrapped it in pink fun fur and then sent it out to every single name that I could see inside the Guardian Media.
So what was the pink fun fur about?
It was just wrapped around. It was just like I was going to attract attention to this, unwelcome attention, but it would attract attention. So off that, I ended up eventually getting lots of random letters, but I also got 2 interviews, and one was at Yorkshire Television and one was at Granada in Manchester, and I failed both. Okay, so that's quite useful. This is my big, massive break into TV. I mean, I cannot tell you how, it was huge for me to get in there. Went into Yorkshire TV, they sat me down in front of a typewriter and they asked me to type out 48 words a minute.
Right.
No, I couldn't do it.
Right.
Cried my eyes out, went home, called into Granada, didn't get that interview either, another clerical role.
Right.
But what I did in that was I thought, I'm not doing this again. Got in there and I basically said to them, I think I'm an ideas person. I'm an ideas person. I think that's what I am, you know, desperately trying to sort of impart to them who and what I was about. And they got it, and they called me in for another interview for a job as a researcher on a channel, you know, Ricardo, because I went, and that was my first gig, and that's where I met you.
Yeah.
And basically I was in, I got the gig, and I was in as a junior researcher. And the truth is, my head exploded when I got in that role, and let's be honest, I took a pay cut.
Yes.
I was working at the theatre at that time in Bradford, and I took a pay cut of about $4,000 a year.
Yeah.
And add to that, I was now having to commute an hour and a half every single day, there and back. Tough.
It was brutal.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
And I did find it hard. You know, it was a real eye-opener. But as we've been talking about it, haven't I basically cracked on and quickly flew up the ladder.
Now, why?
Sorry, that was the longest answer ever.
Brilliant. It's brilliant.
You've got it all now.
See, why I remember with you, and why I clicked with you, and you know, it was your background. It was that you there were a number of types, you know, very confident individuals who quite a few Oxford graduates that were there as well. But you were a working class girl from Bradford, you know, and I just found that really. Could you just tell us a little bit about just a brief about, you know, qualifications, schooling? What was the whole experience? And was TV an expectation?
Oh gosh, no. I mean, you've got to, you know. I mean, I am from a sort of classic, you know, working class background. Rita, Sue, and Bob too. You know, I did hang out on those estates. That's where I grew up. So there was absolutely no expectation whatsoever. And so, but I think all I would add to that is that, you know, I was a quick learner. And when I got into, I suppose what I would say is, I spotted an opportunity. I was going to go for it. That's something that does happen when you have that sort of background. You know, you can be quite entrepreneurial, quite driven, quite, you know, you have to push if you're going to escape those sorts of circumstances. And once I got in, I was going to really, really fight for my place there. But yeah, I found it daunting. I mean, I was literally surrounded by it's an upper middle class environment, you know, it's a white upper middle class environment. And, you know, I literally did cry every day for the first 4 weeks. I mean, I can honestly say that because it was brutal. I was not used to the language, the approach, the confidence, you know, I was not that person. But as I was sort of saying to you, the thing is, I was focused on succeeding. I wasn't going to be thrown off, and I concentrated on the work.
Now, did you know what you wanted to do from the get-go? So as soon as you started you said the Bradford Festival gig, and then you got into Granada. Did you know that's it? I want to be a producer. And is it important to know specifically, you know, early on where you want to go and what you want to be? Do you think?
I think what it propelled me knowing it was, you know, I wasn't power hungry. I must say that I'm not status driven. It was more about the creative freedom is what I was after. And I think having done that stint at that Bradford Festival work experience, that was really helpful because I'd actually been in charge of my own show there. I'd done like hours of making my own shows up and enjoying every aspect of that. So I was really keen to be able to recreate that. Quite how, I just knew that that's what I wanted to do for creative reasons. And so I did know when I got in there, that would be my dream.
Right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And do you think, would you advise people wanting to get into an industry to have a very fixed point, or is it possible to kind of find your way? You know, will it take too much time, or is it really, really good to be specific, do you think?
I think it's all about your individual and who you are and what you're about. It's okay to take time and learn and get in and then find your way. I think my circumstance was different. I was a bit older.
Right.
You know, I was 27 when I got into TV, so I had a lot to prove and really, really quickly.
Right.
Whereas I think there are lots of people who can get in quite a bit younger, get in as runners, you know, oversee, watch, see what they enjoy, see what they like. It's, you know, I wouldn't say everybody has to take that position that they know immediately.
The actual world of TV. So when you joined and you got into you cracked it, you got that break. Was the work and the people and the environment, was it what you expected it to be? Were there any misconceptions, you know, looking back?
I think it was where and you'll know this, Ricardo, we actually were in quite an unusual world in that it was a real hothouse for young people. Yeah. So that specific environment was lots of people very competitively angling for the jobs. You know, that was quite an unusual circumstances. I've worked in loads of places since. It's not quite as cutthroat as that. Right. However, what I would say is fabulous people. Yeah. I mean, some of the cleverest, funniest, and most intelligent people I've ever met in my life do work in TV. Yeah. You know, I'm sure they're in other fields as well, but you do have, you know, some of the best fun ever. Yeah. Some inspiring people too.
Cool. And has the industry changed, in your opinion, from when you started to now?
I sort of can't tell. Sometimes I don't know that it has changed for me personally enough. I still think it remains too white, too upper middle class. You know, that's still the stranglehold. It's, you know, there's a lot of status, cash to telly, and it attracts people as a consequence. So I think, you know, there's a lot more knocking on doors, there's a lot more conversations to be had.
So prior to COVID, you know, we had the Me Too movement, and we had like representation within television being challenged, and that was like 2-3 years ago. Has there been an impact? Have you noticed an impact from that movement at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is. I think the conversations are ongoing. I mean, I think, you know, the McTaggart this year was all about disability, and I know those conversations are happening as a consequence. I think it's more about it's a battle. Right. It's a push. It's a constant push, and then gnawing at the, you know, gatekeepers. Right. We just got to be relentless.
Right. Okay. And gaining access into the industry compared to, I mean, you did mention about the media section in the Guardian newspaper.
I think a big fluffy VHS.
But
that's the only way in.
but compared to now, what's the, you know, there are loads more channels. Is it a lot easier to get in?
Listen, what I think about it is that at least you have the net. At least you can read and access. There's information out there that might offer those opportunities. And I think if you're canny and you're looking and you're determined, you're going to find a way in, definitely. Personally, I think I sort of know who I was and what I think I'd be doing now. Mm-hmm. I was really interested in ideas, content making. I think I would be making things and I'd be putting it online. I think I'm pretty certain that Rebecca now would be content producing little sketches, things, comedy. You know, I was obsessed with it then. So I would have been doing that, and I'd have been doing it online, and I'd have been trying to create some traction that way and using that as a way in. I'm pretty certain.
And are you confident that talent scouts, for want of a better, or people in the industry would kind of value and recognize that?
I think so. I think if you know, I think we do look. Everybody is looking. There's a constant. That people are looking all the time. Everybody wants the next big thing, and you don't have to be the talent in front.
Yeah.
You know, you can be the clever person writing it behind. You know, you can be the person editing it, directing it, you know, doing the beautiful makeup, doing the amazing costume. You know, all of these things do get interest.
Brilliant. Well, at this point, I just want to open up to some questions before I crack on. So, yeah, questions, please. Awesome, Rachel.
What kept you motivated as being a girl from like a working class and sort of having this researching job where obviously taking a pay cut? What kept you motivated to keep going?
I think recognising it was a really rare opportunity, and you know what? It's that thing of, you know, once you get an opportunity of a lifetime, you go for it, don't you? You know, it's almost die trying. Die trying.
Brilliant. Yeah, we've got.
Harder to break into it if you're an older person compared, like someone in the 30s. Does it see look for the younger, or is it on the talent or? Okay.
I think it depends. You know, when I got in, I think I could fake looking younger. I'll be honest. Do you know what I mean? I think I fit in okay. I suppose so I don't want to be put off. I think what I would say is it's where you're going to go. I think if you're coming at it older, you bring loads of skills and qualities, resilience, discipline. You know, you have a lot going for you, but I think you have to be maybe slightly more specialist. You're bringing something from your working life. You're bringing something from your experience that's specific, that would really, really suit a role, you know. So if you were absolutely sports mad and you'd been a sports journo and you were then trying to get a foot in the door at 32 at talk radio or whatever, you know, 5 Live, then I think you would have an opportunity. You'd probably get in. Do you see what I mean? So I think you need to be bringing something as you get older.
Cool. So we've got well, for Mark's sake, we'll go here. Oh no, he's gone. Mark's gone. You're gonna have to wait. It's all right.
He's on it. He's on it, Ricardo.
So you run your own company, CanCan Productions. What skills did you need to learn in order to run it successfully?
Do you know what? Just a lot. You know, I've been in it 25 years, haven't I? I've been in TV 25 years. So, you know, I'm not, you know, sure that I'm, you know, I could run it even more successfully. I could, but the reality is I'm bringing just a ton of, I know how to make TV. I think I have a reputation for being able to make television. I have relationships across networks. I know people inside all the different channels. You know, so all of that, I think, accumulatively builds up to a picture where I can give it a go and think I'm going to have a reasonable chance.
Hi, you said that you called Manchester Granada after they rejected your interview, after they said no. If you didn't call them back, you think you'd be where you are now?
Yeah, you know what? I do. I think about that. And do you know what? I'm actually really, I owe my career to a woman called Nicola Nuttall.
All right. Yes. Yeah.
You know, I really do. I think that HR woman is who I owe my career to. But I have told her that. But I think, you know, I must have just, do you know what? Gut feeling. I don't think I'd have taken no for an answer. I think having gotten that close into the door, I think I'd have probably been bombarding them with ideas. And I think eventually they'd have cracked under the weight of ideas that were coming through. That, you know, it's like, that's my honest feeling. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. And we've got, one at the back.
Take on a career change and who was your biggest inspiration?
Say that again.
What made you take on a career change and who was your biggest inspiration?
Well, really, I think I hadn't planned for a career change. I just didn't know almost that telly was a career. I think it was just an opportunity that presented itself and I went for it. And in terms of inspiring characters, I've had quite a few mentors over the years, and they have, that we might come to, and, you know, they have really, really inspired me. And you know, people, I tell you actually, who was really inspirational for me early on in my career was a comedian called Linda Smith, who I saw when I was about 14 in Bradford. And she's a political comedian. She's died very young, sadly, a sort of peer of Jeremy Hardy. And she proved to me that women can be really funny, really politically funny. And that was quite inspiring.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And just, yeah, then we'll move on. No, just Mickey Mouse.
Go on, ask one.
So you've done a bit of a mix of like properly scripted comedy, like Citizen Khan stuff, and like kind of I guess scripted but less scripted, like comedy.
Yeah, that comedy entertainment. Yeah.
Did that come from kind of a desire to do both, or was it just a chance of just a matter of taking the chance that came, and also what are main differences you found between them?
Really interesting, long subject. Basically, I think I loved comedy, adored it, everything about it, mad on it. Very few opportunities in the north to do comedy. Didn't realise, I had no clue really that it's all in the south, most of it. So didn't understand the differences when I first got into it. So I think what I did was put comedy into everything that I did.
Right.
Every single genre that I was involved in, I would always be trying to be comedic or amusing or finding some, you know, an angle on it. And then over time, I sort of grew to understand the differences. Scripted is always a very precious art. You know, it is the hardest, and it takes a long time. I'd been writing quite a lot in the background, and that gave me an understanding of scripts. And I don't think because I know lots of people in comedy entertainment, and had I not had this fiction background, I don't think I would have made the leap over. I think it's more specialist. Once you start getting to scripted comedy, drama, there is slightly more specialist. Comedy is a bit more accessible.
Cool. So I'd like to just focus a little bit about that. We'll come to, there's an opportunity for some more questions to come back. So we'll be going straight to you first. Okay.
Think a good one. Think of a really good one.
So you have a history in successfully producing comedy programs. What makes good comedy, in your opinion, and what does a commissioner look for in a comedy drama?
Okay, so I should clarify, actually. I never produced Royal Family or Gavin and Stacey or RAB, but what I did was executive produce them. I looked after those for the Beeb.
Okay.
So I think what I would say is I have been involved in launches. I was involved in the launch of Citizen Khan. I think that's probably one of the best examples, because I'd set up a thing called the Salford Sitcom Showcase. It was basically Peter Salmon, who ran Media City. Media City was starting, so it's 10 years ago, and he asked me to do this, set this thing up, which is effectively a showcase of 9 scripts across 3 days. And 100 scripts came in as a competitive element. We picked out 10 and narrowed it down to we narrowed it down to 6 and put those on their feet. So I did semi-staged versions. Khan didn't stand out. It was a good script. You could see the humour in it. You know, it was funny. It was interesting. It's great to try and do a Muslim comedy. It felt important to try. Yeah. As soon as it was on its feet, I knew that of everything that we were going to do, that was going to stand out. Right. So it's a magical combination of talent, as in key star quality, charisma, meets writing, meets ether. It's like it's time, you know, it's like it had been overdue. The world was lacking diversity massively. We needed it's a combination of things where you're desperate for the Muslim guy to do a white gag. You're desperate, the audience need it. We all need it. We need to puncture this debate with something new. Yeah. So I think that's, and in terms of what makes for good comedy, I'm really diverse in I love very obscure to very, very broad mainstream. I'm not precious about it. I think everybody should laugh, from people, who love Mrs. Brown's Boys through to, Zen driving school. I'm for it all. Yeah. So I think my gut is that comedy sort of lives on the edge.
Right.
That's sort of when it's at its best.
Right.
It's always got something to puncture, and it's not necessarily edgy in a way, you know. Oh, I'm loving the soundtrack.
Yeah.
You know, but
If it's Spielberg, tell him to wait.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, that's my gut.
Okay. So yeah, you were the developer and the originating producer for Sunny D.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And Home from Home.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
I'm very proud of Sunny D actually, because I mentored Dane Baptiste, who was again, I got to a point in my career where I was really frustrated by the lack of diversity, and I thought I'm at a place where I can actually do a tiny bit about it. So I knew Dane, had come across Dane, and basically mentored Dane in his run up to Edinburgh.
All right.
And then Dane got nominated, and he was the first black comedian to get nominated for the Perrier or whatever it was at the time. So I was really, really chuffed at that.
Right.
And off the back of that, was able to sort of push him into the BBC and get Sunny D away through a competitive pilot system. You know.
So the path for comedy writing and for comedy drive, is it generally kind of doing that festival run, or going through like not initiatives or schemes, but you know the Salford sitcom
yeah,
showcase.
It's very circuitous. I think there's a lot of writer performers that do well in comedy of late,
Right.
and that's basically so they build up. You know, they're on the comedy circuit. They build up
Right.
through numerous awards.
Right.
That's one way to do it.
Right.
It's harder if you're a writer.
Right.
Yeah.
Have I got news for you? Looks like a tough gig from my perspective.
Yes.
You've got the ego of the presenters. It's very topical. It's very satirical. There's all of the legal. There's a legal minefield, I would have thought, of what to say and what not to say. So, what was it like producing that? And do you have any memorable kind of anecdotes from it?
I suppose, you know, it was a big gig. It was a real sort of moment in my career when I got that. And, you know, I was very fortunate in that I basically had a brilliant mentor in a guy called Richard Wilson, who's the executive producer of it and remains an executive producer now. And I'd worked with him on a show in Manchester, which he very unusually was across. I'd been a series producer on a thing called I Love the 80s, which was a huge series. And brilliant. Off the back of that, I did another big series called Fame, Set and Match, which is a satirical, you know, pop doc series, right. Which I worked on with Richard, expressed an interest in politics. And Richard then asked me to go in and do the extended repeat of Have I Got News initially. And then basically off the back of that, they asked me to go in and do the gig. Right. So, you know, I had to go and meet the head of Hat Trick. Terrifying interview.
So what we did, was it a pitch? What would be in an interview like that?
I think what you've got to think, they're really, really big characters. You're talking about, go look them up, people like Jimmy Mulville and Denise O'Donoghue. They're huge names in the industry. They're absolutely giants. So I know this because I've done my research, obviously. And so when you're going in to meet them, it's pretty intimidating. But what they want to know is, am I up to speed with politics? Right. Am I really, you know, so there was a test in that. They were testing me on that in a way. Right. And I was really up to speed on politics and the characters involved and some of the sensitivities of it. Can I be funny? It's a funny job. Am I going to be able to look after? You've got to imagine, you know, Have I Got News for You has 8 to 9 of the most, you know, esteemed comedy writers in the entire country doing gags for it. As a producer, I'm going to have to go in the room and choose their material. There's got to be a bit of mutual respect there. There's got to be a sense that I know what I'm doing. Right. So, but, you know, cocky. I'd built up a lot of confidence because I'd been series producing before that, big gigs. Right. You know, series producing I Love the 80s was an enormous hit. Right, yeah, it was. You know, it was a massive success. And I'd also done a lot of, I was writing on the side, so I was getting sketches away on radio myself. So I could write, so I could sort of understood the construction. I was, you know, that backdrop of that sort of side hustle in writing I was doing an MA at the same time in writing, script writing. That gave me a bedrock of confidence that I understood.
Right.
You know, add to which I was out watching a lot of comedy, so I was sort of familiar with who and why, and I came with an agenda. I came with a clear point of view that I wanted to try and make it a bit more diverse. You know, I had huge stand-up rows about wanting more women on it, about really.
Yeah.
But and I think all of that mix of opinionated, up to speed, and a bedrock of confidence meant that I could go on and thrive there, really.
And they were clearly open for that as well, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Cool. Well, Steph's Packed Lunch. Okay.
Yes.
90 minutes of programming 5 days a week. Well, it's or 100 minutes.
100 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds immense, really, just to kind of, and it's your production company.
Yeah.
So could you just tell us the story behind Steph's Packed Lunch and just describe the working environment, please?
Yeah, so basically it came about because, again, it's always really useful. Anything that you do sort of leads you on to other things. It's really hard to describe, but I'd worked at Princess for a while, a company called Princess. And I was there I think I was on maternity leave. I was freelance maternity. I never was in a staff job. I was always hopeless at taking staff jobs. Ended up there. Unusual company for me to go to work for, but I'd been given this open book by the Henrietta Conrad who ran it, and I said, brilliant, I'll do 2-3 days a week, see where I get to. But while I was there, they did things like The Right Stuff, T4. They did lots and lots of daily shows, and I found that fascinating. And I'd go in and I'd sort of look in the gallery and watch them as they turn the sets around and put the audiences in, the banks of audience, and basically I think it's like curious, interested. You know, I was genuinely interested to how they did it, knew that was the bedrock of their company. So when I just set up CanCan by about 6 months, and I'd done it because I'd been Home from Home, which is a sitcom I developed in BBC One, was going on BBC One, and I was going to be able to get a credit for my company. That forced me to start CanCan. And basically the Channel 4 announced that they were coming to Leeds and that there was going to be a tender, which is an open bidding process for a daily live show. And at that point, I immediately thought, that's interesting. If you were going to run a company, you know, I know the bread and butter. So this is where your sort of business, bit of entrepreneurialism comes in. If I was going to run a business, a daily show is going to be the thing that would provide you, because lots and lots of companies exist in the north of England that are factual, that do one-offs, and they have like one a year. And you know, it's a real hand-to-mouth existence, and I just thought, it's, you know, risky, not sure that feels the right way to go. So, but I was a tiny company. A daily live show is a huge operation. You know, minimum 50 people working on it, huge infrastructure needed. So I was just pragmatic and thought, I'm never going to get this on my own. I'm too small. I'm literally me and 2 other people. You know, I can't do this on my own. So I reached out to a guy called Ben Wicks, who is an exec producer at Expectation. I've known Ben a long time. I actually mentored Ben. Bizarrely, we met in Leeds. We were both doing a tiny bit of work in a company close to here. He was in for a week. I was there for 3. He had got a first in politics from Edinburgh. And then I was 4 months later, I was at Have I Got News for You? And I called him. Ben came in as a runner, got the job as a runner, and that's it. You know, and so it's really interesting how these things occur. Ben was at Expectation. Inside Expectation were 2 of the biggest legends in daytime television, which is Tim Hinks and Peter Fincham. Again, you need to know your industry. You need to be like you need to know who's who. And even if you never meet them, just having when their name's mentioned, you know who they are. I reached out to Ben, said, Ben, tap up Peter and Tim, ask them if they'd be interested in putting in a joint bid for this tender. And they did. I went down and met them, and we decided to go for it. And a year of development, a year of unpaid schlepping down to London, multiple meetings, multiple iterations of a treatment and a development, and eventually, basically, we got it.
Just on that one point, I think that kind of gets forgotten, or it feels as though that schlep, that doing all of the work for something that's not guaranteed, but you're still putting money up and you're still having to do the work because that often goes unnoticed, I think.
Well, it's success story, overnight success.
Yeah.
That's the classic narrative we all like, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the reality of, I would say it is slog. You've got to,
Yeah.
So when you're sort of slogging away doing the work that you guys are doing now, and anything that you do in the background, it is all slog, but it does lead places. You've got to put the work in to get stuff away.
Yeah, and then the development for Steph's packed lunch, did you have a clear idea from the get-go of what the whole thing was going to be like, or how did that evolve?
No, I mean, it did evolve. It has really evolved, and it's evolved on air. It's been a fascinating process. I've been really privileged to go through it. I'll be honest, I've absolutely loved it, really, for the most part. We did, a pilot that was we did a pilot that was part of the process. I think we were up against, it's a competitive pilot process. I think there were 3 companies were given money to do a pilot. And I think what we probably brought, which the others didn't, was humour, comedy, but baseline, we're always going to have Ben and I, that's our background, so we understand what daytime requires, but you're talking Channel 4, you want to give it some humour and a bit of attitude. So that was a competitive pilot system. And through that, we then were on air. And I mean, the truth is, Channel 4 didn't know what to expect. Nobody knew. Right. And if you understand, I do understand daytime quite a lot better now. I mean, basically, daytime audiences are glued to this morning, GMB this morning, that basically they turn it on and then they don't turn it off. Right. From ITV. So it goes GMB, doesn't it? Then This Morning, then Loose Women. And there hasn't been, and obviously there's breakfast on BBC Breakfast, there hasn't been anything in Channel 4, on Channel 4 for a long time. So it's like turning a tank around in terms of viewer habits, getting visibility, getting seen, and basically we've evolved it on air. That is the reality of it. Worked out a family dynamic, what works, who's bringing, what do we need, what are the sort of faces and the family that we need to wrap around Steph. A mixture of content, because you're dealing with a daytime audience and they want a mixture of human interest, food, you name it, we bring it, and we trial all sorts of things and see what we responds on socials, do bits of research to establish who's really pushing through, who they hate. All it's fascinating. It's really fun. It's good. Very lucky. And
COVID, that was a bit of a
nightmare.
Yeah,
nightmare.
So what was that?
Well, basically, we'd been commissioned to make this series, and then literally the contracts are signed. You've got to think this is a year, maybe 15 months of unpaid work getting that thing away. A lot of effort, and contracts are signed. Fabulous. We're due to start in the April, and COVID hits 3 weeks from I think we were due to launch. Right. So it was a real is this just going to be abandoned as a process? But thankfully, in fairness to Steph, it was Steph McGovern's idea. She went, why don't we do it from my house? We can't do it in studio, do it from my house. And there's something brilliantly refreshing and unusual about that. And that's how we did it. So basically, we've been on air since the pandemic started in iteration. We'd already sort of committed to a lease in a building, and we're in Leeds Dock, which I don't know if any of you guys know. We're down there basically. The reason we're there is that I one day on my bike was just cycling through Leeds looking for a space and saw it. It was a bar, Dock 29, I think it was called. Went in, had a drink, and just thought, this is a beautiful space. Yeah. And then when we were looking for spaces, that suggested that, and Channel 4 really liked that idea.
Brilliant, brilliant. So going to open it up again. So any questions?
I just wondered, I don't know how relevant it is now, but I was just wondering whether you've ever felt at a disadvantage being a woman at all.
listen, I'm not going to pretend that I haven't had my Me Too moments, because I have. And there are, there are times, I had a particularly tough time when I was at BBC Comedy, actually, which was, and I'd go into rooms where what you find is quite often in telly is that sometimes women can be pushed into the administrative roles. Not always, but in certain genres they are. And so you're being an editorial person, you become rarer and rarer and rarer. And there's just fewer and fewer of you, basically. And I ended up in a room quite often where I was the only working class northern woman in a room full of guys who were all talking about the school that they all went to. It can be tough. It can be tough, it can be hostile at times. Comedy is a very male environment. However, on the upside, you probably stand out a bit more. You're probably a bit more memorable because you're so different. And ultimately there are different genres that are really female. There's tons of women work in certain genres and dominate, in a brilliant way. So I suppose it's not a disadvantage. It's like you've just got to insist.
Brilliant.
You're there, aren't you?
Brilliant. Cool. Yep.
Hi, sorry, I met earlier this year. I was watching Phoenix Nights with my mate, and he said something along the lines of, "This would never be made these days." And I think with some people, there's a debating thing about comedy that you can say what you wanted in my generation, and make it a joke, but now you can't. And there's even comedians like Jimmy Carr and I think Ricky Gervais that kind of say audiences are too sensitive these days. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it is interesting. I think you look at a lot of, I remember Phoenix Nights. I worked with Peter Kay a lot in his early career. And I think, I do wonder myself whether it would. I think there's I think it's really difficult because I think it's right that we are more sensitive. I think it's appropriate that we are. We can't just be dismissive of what it is, to be other. And, comedies can be particularly cruel and particularly good at alienating and finding a way to focus and, turns people into the butt of the joke. It should always be about showing it up to power, shouldn't it? That's where comedy is at its most effective, is make fun of those that, it's where Spitting Image is brilliant, for example. So do I think Phoenix Nights would be made now? I think it would, but I think it would be going through a filter, and some of the things that are in there probably wouldn't fly, and maybe that's no bad thing. They'd be a bit more ingenious and they'd find something else to be brilliantly funny about.
Here. I think, yes, I would like to think that it's what's being asked of all creatives is to be better.
Yeah.
And I think it's too easy to kind of look back and kind of go, well, or if you're a dinosaur and you're kind of going, well, this is way too intense now, and back in the olden golden days it was better. And I think, well, actually, there are a lot of people who are a lot more smarter, have a voice more so than ever before. And if you are going to step up and enter into the field, you got to be on your game, and I think if it makes us better, why not? That's
100%.
Cool. We've got a pocket, we've got loads.
Hiya. I love your eyeshadow. What? Give me their name. Sacked. No, go on. Sorry, go on. Were you in the Lunchmates then? Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well done. Yeah, because I recognise you from a Lunchmate. Yeah. I love that there's some people from Leeds are getting in on the mix. I love it.
I was just thinking, on those first couple of episodes, was there ever a moment when you panicked and thought, is this going to succeed? Is this going to be okay?
Oh yeah, honestly, you're always honestly that is your life. You know, you are like running a tightrope of emotional panic. You know what I mean? It's like get used to that one, but don't worry about that because you know that's it's okay. That's right. You should be fueled with adrenaline and nerves, and what you've got to do is just, and you get this is that this is age and experience, is that you sort of, I always just hone in on my instinct. You know, I really try and just go, could that be funny? Or try not to be too analytical, but more, am I enjoying this? Am I finding myself sitting back just a tiny bit and relaxing? Quite key, I think, and watching. And if I'm not, what could we do to create that? Comedy is very much about atmosphere. How do we create an atmosphere that is going to allow us to relax and enjoy this? Because if I'm doing that in very stressful circumstances, chances are somebody sat at home with a cup of tea is going to. Yeah.
Brilliant. I've only got time for one more. Go on then, Rachel. Well, no, go on, Rachel, and we'll do the bloke at the back.
What do you love the most about your job?
It's variety. It's variety. That's what I love about my job. I think it's unpredictable. I know lots of people have quite, know what's happening. I've got quite an unusual job, and I'm grateful.
Cool. And yeah, gentleman at the back. Yeah.
Right, go on. Right, get it sorted out.
So obviously you're meeting with the likes of GMB and the BBC breakfasts, and people call it like a fight to figure attention and stuff like that. So how do you compete with the the BBC and ITV?
Well, it's a really good question. I mean, we're a much smaller audience-wise. We're a very different channel. There's nothing in there that's we don't have a huge inheritance. We don't have a huge inherited audience. So I think what you've got to try and do, well, how we see it, is provide an alternative. So Loose Women's on against us. So what we've done is evolved. We've noticed that bit of string there. That Steph works really well with guys, that actually we build sort of a male environment around her, which feels then unusual and different to Loose Women. So I think it's always trying to find the point of difference. Very informal. The laughs are real. There's some really brilliant banter on there. And then evolve it. See what continues to fly. Do bits of research. What's your thoughts? Yeah, that's a really good point. We love that. Our point of difference is we're up here, yeah? Do we sell it enough, do you think? Do you think we ought to be selling it a bit more?
Definitely, yeah. Obviously, there are bits where, you can improve, certainly.
I've got pen and paper
we've
here.
Got a channel editor.
Yeah,
We've got a channel editor. I'll look forward to I'll look forward to the 10-page critique. Yeah, so it's cool. It's fine. I'm cool with it.
Brilliant. Well,
yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Welcome.
No, you're a superstar. I think, can we make some noise? Just break the silence for